Hey, we're live. Okay, welcome. I'm Karen Rands. We're going to talk about the money hunt, putting plans in place to attract revenue and capital. So it's a lot about business planning, but within that, it's going to be all about your specific intent of why you're doing a plan. And most of the times it's to figure out your capital needs and raise money. And we are here at 15 Perry Street. We just finished up 1 million cups. And 15 Perry Street is a co-working space down in Noonan. So for all those people on the southern crescent of Atlanta, meaning Noonan to Fayetteville, this is an ideal place to come and do your work as a Soho. So you don't have to drive all the way up to Atlanta. Lots of opportunities down here. And they do lots of events and networking events down here. So that's my plug for my host. All right, let's get started. There we go. So, $1 million question. Always need to start with this when you're thinking about starting a business, or why are you an entrepreneur? Is it by choice, or are you born or bred? So it's sort of like, sometimes, as we go through our economic cycles and various things happen, people will get laid off and then they'll try to find a job and they'll decide that they're going to start a business. Oh, I've always wondered what it would be like to be an entrepreneur. And so then it's not their choice, or they kind of do it out of desperation, but their heart's not really in it. And the born and bred question kind of gets down to that to a certain degree, because all the successful entrepreneurs that I have seen, a few of them kind of navigate their way to become that, but most of them have a fire in their belly that is not there when there's somebody that just really wants a good, stable job. Because to be an entrepreneur, you have to face all kinds of obstacles. It's a lot of uncertainty, and you do your best to put a good plan in place, but you've got to be flexible to be able to adjust to the plan based on the circumstances of things that happen. And so there's a whole nother level of what you have to put into not just doing business, but it's how you go about doing business. And so sometimes people truly are born that way. They just know from the very beginning. They start with the paper route. They do various things that they're doing to make money on their own, even if it's a lemonade stand, when they're young, right? And then occasionally people they'll think that that's what they want to do because they have an idea like this. And the good news is they can kind of be bred that way, meaning that they can gain the skills that they need if they're willing to learn and realize that they need the additional help over and beyond just sort of an intuition of what needs to get done and how to get it done. So that's all about figuring out that piece of it. And then it comes down to what's your motivation, because that comes down to that passion and the fire in your belly. Because when it comes time to starting a business, it has to be worth the work. A lot of times when I work with entrepreneurs, and I'll talk a little bit more about my background here in just a minute, but when I work with entrepreneurs, one of the things that they have to understand is their motivation, because they'll have an idea and they want to jump ship from their job and go start it. And I say, well, you have to decide, do you feel so passionate about what it is that you're doing that you're willing to take a half a cut pay and what you're making right now, or no pay for a while? You're willing to work twice as many hours as what you're working right now, and potentially go in debt, miss things that your family is doing, miss social events, miss things, because you have to do what it takes to succeed your business, and your business becomes one of the very first things that the priority, or else it won't succeed. So it's got to be worth the work, and then beginning with the end in mind. You don't go on a trip. Very rarely do we go on a trip without knowing where we're going. So when it comes time to start a business, and we're going to talk about this, but this is important. Do you want to build something that's going to give you a good lifestyle? Do you want to build something that's going to, you're going to work real hard and sell it and then do some other things with it? Or do you want to try to build something that's going to leave a legacy and an impact on the world like nothing else, because it's one of those companies that can go all the way, right? So, what is that? Because ultimately you have to build it like a clock, right? You've got to build a clock that says it will run without you there. Otherwise, it's just a job with more responsibilities. So if you can't build a business that will generate income when you're not there, it goes to the cash flow quadrant of Robert Kiyosaki, being a business owner that can make money in their business even if they're not clocking in, clocking out every day. to then ultimately become an investor in other things. But you got to build it like a clock, because a clock will tell time whether you're in the room or not. And so that kind of goes down to the kind of money that you get and whether you're going to grow organic or steroid growth. I call this steroid growth because they're a female entrepreneur that had been highly successful in developing tech companies in Atlanta. Her very first one had, gotten acquired by IBM for big bucks and all that kind of stuff. And then the second one, she was doing a completely different way. It was in networking tech. Well, first one was in security. The next one was in network security. And so she was presenting at this event, and she said, you know what? At the time when I first started my first business, all I wanted to do was get there big. I wanted that VC thing. I wanted to go big, 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 right? And she said, I took in this VC money and it completely changed the game. It took all of the joy out of what I was doing. I had all these bosses that I needed to make these milestones on, and I was like on steroid growth, right? I had pumped myself up to achieve my goals, but at what cost? To me personally, to my work environment, to the culture of the folks that I brought in at the early stage and the commitment they had made. And so in this one, I'm doing it organically. And she was bootstrapping, and she talked about different ways that she was bootstrapping to get her development done. And so she was, and so you have to decide, because a lot of times entrepreneurs will say, I just want to find somebody who'll give me some money so I can go do this stuff. And they think it's sort of a shortcut, but it comes with a whole lot of stuff. And that's kind of what stuff you have to do, and we're going to talk about that, and the difference in organic growth, where you can still have some there's lots of options now on how you get capital, and you can still have some capital from outside sources with that, and particularly other types of financing, and grow it organically with a specific plan that says you're going to sell it in 5, 10, 15 years, or cultivate it to be taken over by your family and do something along those lines. So my background, there's a lot of words on this chart. I'll summarize it for you. I got an economics degree from Emory, my MBA in marketing, went on to the corporate world, brought a lot of products to market from IBM. I was working with IBM, to put venture capital and get money for companies during the dot-com stage. Launched a whole new business line for integration of wireless and technology and stuff like that within IBM. And so until I decided I wanted to get in the parade and not watch the parade go by with the startup. It was in dot-com days, okay? And I always joke that my parade was like the Animal House parade. It was going down this dead-end street, running into this brick wall, and I had no idea that was even happening until I was running into the brick wall. But I found a passion for entrepreneurism that I always had, because I guess I was born with a little bit, but I didn't know how to be an entrepreneur because my dad was an entrepreneur. And that led me into this idea of being a venture capitalist, speeding up the process of companies getting to market, growing their business with access to the right kinds of tools and resources and money, which led to the compassionate capitalist movement. And so with the release of my book, The Inside Secrets to Angel Investing, it's a bestseller on a primer for investors to learn how and why they should invest in entrepreneurs. That's the compassionate capitalist movement, because my goal is to have investors that have any sort of discretionary income or liquidity or even big old fat retirement plans they can use to invest into entrepreneur endeavors will strive to learn how to do that. So it becomes as an asset class that's respected as public stocks and real estate as something that's a diversification strategy and a wealth creation strategy. So that's my thing. So part of figuring out on your being an entrepreneur is figuring out, are you a participant in the market or are you a market maker? Okay, and I'll explain what those mean. So participants are basically those kind of businesses that participate in a market. They're the dry cleaners, there's the local restaurant, they're a service provider, there's other people doing pretty much the exact same thing in their community. So they compete on customer service or price or sometimes on location, right? But it's hard to differentiate. There's a lot of fixing, and they're really going to be creating pretty much a lifestyle of business. They're not going to, they can, build a business that makes $1 million a year, and they might be able to sell it for $2 million or something like that if they became highly successful. But it's not something that they're going to scale to such a big deal, because if they're going to scale it to be a 10 million, 20 million, $100 million business, then they are becoming a market maker. And it very may well be that they're a completely new, innovative kind of a concept, or they could be something that they created, something that was franchised, or it's something that they figure out how to license that model out, right? And so, you look at all of these companies here, and they were leaders in what it was that they were doing at the time. We never realized that we needed, a place to go pay $3.50 for a cup of coffee until Starbucks figured out become the best master at marketing on that. And so then you have, fairly ones that have tried to do similar, and they thought, but they'll never catch up to Starbucks. You have people that have been around forever, like a Dunkin' Donuts, doing coffee, and they were Dunkin' and Donuts, and now they're trying to compete by changing their business model a little bit and just Dunkin'. And Dunkin', the world runs on Dunkin' coffee, right? And they've gone retail, they've done that kind of stuff, but they were around a long time before Starbucks, right? Starbucks eclipsed them, and now they're trying to chase Starbucks, right? Because Starbucks was a true market maker. Same thing with any of these other ones in the way we do business, okay? They changed it. Moe's Southwest Grill was one of the first one that was upscale casual, they called it, or fast food casual, or fast. There's a class of that. It's upscale casual fast food. I don't know, something like that. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so and then you got the ones like a Blockbuster that got replaced by Redbox, or they got replaced by these different things, right? Different ones that come in. We don't know if Vine looks like YouTube kept ahead of Vine and didn't quite replace them, because now they've got all this streaming stuff that they're doing. But in every case of these, so what does that mean? When you're in this space, you got competition that you're competing with every day, and people are choosing you over something else and making that selection based on stuff. And in this, you're leading a market, but if you don't stay ahead on an innovation side, somebody's going to eclipse you. Who would have ever thought that? I think there's one Blockbuster left in the America now. It's like in Alaska, right? Yeah, it's like in Alaska. You know what I mean? And so it's now in Redbox. Soon enough, I think I should update this and put Netflix on this, right? Or even Amazon Prime, right? We used to always do the Redbox, and now we don't even do that anymore, even though it's cheaper. We're willing to pay more and there's so much of it. I pay monthly to be able to get movies. Pay more than I paid ever for the number of movies I got from Redbox, but now I feel obligated to watch TV or something. Okay. So how are these related? Clock, money, right? Can your business be a clock? Can you run it like a clock and generate the money for it, right? I talked a little bit about the cash flow quadrant. This is Robert Kiyosaki's, right? So you go from being an employee to self-employed. Self-employed are dictated, both of these are run by their clocks. They're watching the clock, time and money. They trade time for dollars, okay? It's self-employed. It's not until you become a business owner where you have processes and systems and scalability that you become somebody that can make money in your sleep, or make money when you're out of town on vacation, and you continue to make money. And then eventually you get enough money that you can invest it as an investor, as an angel investor, and buy my book, so you can learn how to go from a business owner to an investor and have your money work for you that way, all right? So the entrepreneur pitfalls. Here's the thing you have to understand, and this is why it's important to understand what kind of business you are. 85% of the businesses fail in the first 5 years. It's because they don't know what their plan is where they're going, right? They have a false paradigm on their market value. They think they're going to be this kind of a company, and they're really only going to be this kind of company. And so they have a disconnect with their strategies, their expectations, and where they can go. They don't have their money. They don't have enough money to sustain their operations. They didn't figure out ahead of time how much money they're going to need to be able to do that particular type of business. There's so much. Some entrepreneurs, probably one of the greatest weaknesses of entrepreneurs, there's so many strengths, but it's this faith and hope that they have, and that things will just work out. Right? They work hard enough, it'll just work out. And sometimes that's not necessarily the case. So you got to plan it, you got to do the work, you got to build a team. Right? You know what your skills are, so you can find people that have different set of skills and build a team. You can't just build it and they will come. You've got to have a plan to attract it and generate the revenue. And a big part of it is owners simply don't know what they don't know a lot of times. And so I'm constantly being reminded that I don't know a lot. and I try to have people around me that know more about that than I do. Or thank goodness for Google, one of those market makers, because I can pretty much find anything I want. And now I can even talk to my phone and find what I want to know about. If there's not a podcast or a video on it or somebody that I can talk to, then we're in a world of hurt. But I'm sure. So, all right, big part. This is what we're focused on today: is lack of planning. So, what are the phases of a business and then what do you need to do when it comes to what your business plan needs to look like according to the type of business that you are? We already talked about beginning with end in mind, business plan versus operating plan. So a business plan is sort of what you use to convey your business opportunity to other people, whether it's a bank or an investor. That a lot of times that's probably the most easiest way to describe it, because business plans in general, that kind of business plan is going to be about 20 pages, thereabouts. But your operating plan becomes your blueprint of how you are actually going to run your business. So as you build your team and you got a marketing strategy, you got a marketing person, you're going to say, here's what I think it needs to be. This is what our goals are. Let's work together and figure out a better piece of this. So they've got their piece of the blueprint. Your tech guys got their piece of the blueprint. Your customer service people, your HR and benefits and operations people, they have this strategy of what you're going to do, and that's your blueprint. And even IBM would, on an annual basis, update their operating plan from all their divisions. Was bottoms up. What is your strategy for how you're going to reach your goals and objectives or improve the efficiency in the first year? We got a tornado coming, and then we're and grow that, right? And so so this is where you look at when you go at the different types of businesses. So you got at a concept stage. This is when you might have your day job and you're trying to decide, or you're trying to figure out a different thing. You have to decide if it's worth your time and money. Okay, so are you going to make more money than what you're making right now? And are you going to be able to build it that you can spend less time after a period of time than what you do right now and whatever you're doing to make money now? Okay? And then as you go, and part of that is also to your family. It's to explain to them, because your very first investor, even if it's not dollars, but usually it is dollars because you're taken away from the household when you start a business, is your family. They're your first investors, and they have to believe that you have the ability to execute this, and you've got a plan, so they'll get on board. So when you're not there for dinner a bunch of nights, or you're not there for a family event, or you have to miss this or that, or whatever, they understand, okay? And then, and they're behind you. They're your cheerleaders. They're your biggest cheerleaders, okay? You don't want them to be an anchor. You want them to be, fuel to your wings to soar. So then with the startup, because your first people that you're going to go out with on money, and even unless you've got the means, if you've got a job to get an SBA loan, you're going to have your friends and family. They've got to understand and believe in you, because even if they're not going to invest in you on this might be your cousin, this might be an uncle or something like that, or on the friends, it could be people from college or people that you just know through the chamber. You want them to be your biggest cheerleaders as well, and talk about it, so when they meet somebody or they think of somebody and they know about your business, they'll do an introduction for you. And they'll help you extend beyond who you know in order to do that first one. And then as you grow, it starts to be the path to profitability to attract other people's money. That's more like your business angels, your larger scale money, the venture capital money. If you're going to go to the bank and get that kind of money, so it's how are you going to actually make money? This is launching, and then this is, you have how you're going to make money, but in this point, you really know how you're going to get to profitability, because you should have, as you update your business plan, you should have the actual information of what things cost. What does it mean to be able to grow? How many people do you need? All of those things. And then it continues to morph as you go along your business. So it becomes a living document. The operating plan and the business plan, which is in effect a subset, and then the executive summaries and even a subset of the business plan. Okay, so when it comes to key pieces of your business plan, you have to have your revenue forecast, obviously, this year, next year, monthly, quarterly, competition, your real and perceived. When it comes to competition, it's really important to understand it. No matter how innovative you think your company is, you always have competition. To an investor, they always know that there's competition, because at the very least, it's the status quo. You have to, not to age myself too much, but when I first started with IBM, we were still selling typewriters, and we were coming out with PCs. And so our competition, when I was part of the PC, bringing PCs to market and selling that and convincing people, was to convince people why they should replace their typewriters with a PC. PCs, there weren't a lot of competition. At that point, there was IBM and Compaq, and I don't think Apple had really even come out with anything. There was a couple of this stuff. And so you had that sort of stuff. But our biggest competition was the status quo in the typewriters, right? And, why being able to learn a word processor was better than whiting out the stuff on the typewriter and things like that. Or doing duplicate paper. Some of y'all watching this are going, what? They used to do that? Yeah, you know what I mean? We used to actually put a piece of paper, put a thing in carbon paper in between and type it so you could make a copy of it. That was how you made a copy of it. Okay, so anyway, so you've got always have competition. And so then how are you going to acquire your customers? How long is it going to take? What is the sales cycle on that? How are you going to find them, convert them into buyers? And then delivering whatever it is you're delivering so you can actually collect the money, and then what are your growth plans, right? So whatever it is when it comes to your revenue forecast, it cannot be simply a multiple of X or a percentage of Y. That's where it comes into understanding this customer acquisition model. A lot of times entrepreneurs will say, oh, it's a $500 million market, and if I just get 0.25% of that, then it's going to be this big, right? You have to understand your sales process to understand that you have the potential to actually do that. So even if it's a big number, doesn't mean you're going to attract the stuff or be able to execute on it if you don't actually understand your process of what your cost of goods are and what your cost of sales are in order to get to that goal and objective. And do you know who and why and where are those customers? Who, why, and where? Who are they? Why are they going to buy your product? And where do you find them? So that process of conversion to the customer, so it's the sales funnel that you have. Everybody kind of knows about what the sales funnel is, and depending on your business model, it's a different type of funnel. If you're selling something online, it's a much bigger funnel of eyeballs that you have to get through in the process, and the relationship you have to build and the trust you have to build to get them to converting. If you're doing enterprise software, then it's getting credibility enough to get that appointment with that decision maker. And understanding when do they make their buying decisions? Do they do it on a quarterly basis? Do they do it at the beginning of the year? What's their budget cycle? All that stuff has to figure out so you can understand how to convert them to a customer. And then, is the revenue right when it's delivered, or is it 30 days later? Depending on how you sell your sales cycle. Is it a credit card transaction so you get it pretty much right now? Or is it something that's going through a retail channel that it's going to be delayed? Or is it something that you have to invoice and you have an implementation plan, and so you don't collect your money? It takes 4 months to collect your money. What is that? You have to understand that, and that gets all figured into what your revenue forecast is. And then how do you scale? A lot of times I'll see business plans and revenue forecasts where they've got this number and it goes up, 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 and their expenses go like this, right? And the reality is that your expenses do not stay flat. There's a reason why giant companies like Uber that actually has, relatively speaking, they're contract employees. Majority of the people that work for them are not on a payroll, but they still have to raise hundreds of millions of dollars because there's an expense associated with delivering what they do. And even when it comes to scaling and how big your IT department has to have, your customer service department, all of that kind of stuff. If you don't know that, if you don't have mentors or people that can help you figure that out, then go to a small business development center and sit down with a person from SCORE. There's one probably at a university near you. They've got books in there that will tell you exactly, based on all different kinds of industries, expected cost for startup, expected cost for people over time based on how much you're going to be delivering, all that kind of stuff. They have all that information from all those businesses that have succeeded and not succeeded. So what is it about the risks of a bad plan? If you do a bad plan, you don't figure out these things that we talked about, you're going to waste your time. You're wasting your time. You're going to waste your money when it comes to trying to raise capital, trying to launch, everything like that. It's going to be so painful and suffering. And I can tell you, I'm firsthand, my first business, I did a plan, but I was kind of like, it's all in my head mostly, like most people. And I did this. This is me. I wasted time, money, pain, suffering, and I failed. And so, it is really important to understand, your chart and where you're going to go with that. Because when you're in the middle of building your business, there's this phrase, there's a book out there that I always encourage in my coaching program for entrepreneurs, I have them read this, and it's The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, and there's a phrase that he uses there in that, and you've probably heard it, you didn't know it came from this book. Are you working on your business or in your business? Okay? Working in your business means that you are in the middle of the trees. You're doing it. You're putting out all these fires. You're doing all this stuff, and every day you're working in your business, and you can't see the forest for the trees. You can't separate out and figure out, oh, if I only did this or fixed this one inefficiency, then I could do these other things. But because you're so busy in it, you are just frantically trying to get stuff done rather than separating, taking a step back and seeing how to solve the problems, okay? And so if you need a plan, I also have, if you go to bit.ly KCH tools, there's an online tool that I recommend that you can have your team, you can have 3 people on it, you can do it, it asks you a questionnaire, fills out the information for you based on really generic industry stuff so that you don't have to have writer's block and come up with writing it. All you've got to do is go in and modify it and edit it. Oh, that's not my business. Then you change the sentence to be your business, right? But it does the marketing, does all this stuff. It answers these questions. You answer the questions that you've got all in your head by answering this form, and then it fills in and creates a working document. And then once you get it cleaned up, you can have other people collaborate on it, and then you can download it as a Word document and finish it up, right? And so, but if you've got an advisor, you've got somebody that's helping you with different things. So it's bit.ly KCH in caps -tools, all right? And they also have a whole bunch of other templates and things that you can use there too. Okay, attracting capital with your plan. You have the plan to grow your business is tactical, right? It's got very specific milestones and goals. It's got a specific intent. And then there's the blueprint, right? We talked about the operating plan and the team tool. So when lenders care about how it's going to guarantee to get their money back. That's all that lenders really care about, is getting their money back, okay? And they take care about the cash flow that's reflected in the financial plan. So you're not a startup. If you're a startup and you're trying to go get lender money, then it's all about your credit, which is a good thing. If you're an employee, get your loans lined up prior to leaving the company and starting your business, okay? Then you get your loans lined up, right? And then you can have the basis. I talked to an entrepreneur last night, and she's leaving her or selling her marketing business and going to starting this other business. And she already has an SBA loan lined up. She's already got these other kind of things. And then they're going to go out once they're in business and raise a friends and family round. So she's starting with a little bit of a debt. It's a brick and mortar kind of a business. So, and then investors, they care about the future potential. So so when you do your plan, a lot of times you're going to have to modify a little bit about what the focus is of it, because these guys want a more conservative plan. Lenders want a conservative plan. They just want to believe that you can make the money and the cash flow to make your payments. Whereas investors really want, what's the pie in the sky in the future, where you can go, because they want to maximize the return on investment, and that your particular deal is going to be better than the 3 other deals that they're looking at. Okay, so they trust your numbers, they trust you as an entrepreneur, and then they trust the outcomes, so that they believe they can make more money with that deal, your deal, than the other deals that they have, and more money than wherever their money is right now making the money. Okay, so it's all about the return on investment, and so that's how you have to think about that. So on your debt sources, banks only give money to make money. Sometimes people don't understand this. The money that they're lending out is the money that all the people that have checking accounts on that bank and savings accounts, that they reuse that savings money. It's not actually sitting in that bank. You can get access to it, right? I mean, it's there because they have enough money, but they take deposits and put those deposits to work making loans, right? So they can't do a whole lot of losing money, because then they really don't, then they have a problem, right? And so, that's a big part of what you have to understand, that they're giving money out to make money. So SBA just means that government is guaranteeing a portion of it. The bank still has a risk associated with that. So that's where the SBA typically guarantees 85% of the amount of the loan. So they look at that, and it doesn't mean that they're only seeing if you can qualify for this 15%. You still need to have it, but they do, get in there to try to make sure that you have all of that. And that's why you have to have assets a lot of time to secure it as collateral against an SBA loan. But there's also a lot of micro loans out there that are up to $25,000 that you can get. They're all about economic development. There's every city's got them. You can, Google economic development micro loans. There's some national organizations that provide micro loans, and they're intended really mostly for traditional types of businesses, particularly if there's minority owned or women owned, or they want to go and locate in an area where they need jobs. And if you're a business that can hire 3-4 businesses, a lifestyle business, 3-4 employees, then you are probably a candidate. And sometimes you can use that for buying computer equipment. You can use it for buying your point of sale equipment, for refurbishing the space that you have, buying inventory, things like that, right? And then there's asset secured loans. So when you're buying property, you're buying a building that you're going to use, you put your business in, purchase orders, the purchase order becomes the asset because there's product and somebody on the hook for it, right? Invoices, if you're going to factor an invoice, then you can get loans against the payment of that invoice. You can get loans against inventory. Sometimes it depends on, they kind of do a lease back on inventory, particularly if it's any kind of hard technology type of inventory. And cash flow. What's your cash flow? There's lenders that will take a percentage of your cash flow and give you, anticipate what your cash flow is going to be over the next 12 months, and they will give you a loan for that amount now. So if you need to do some expansion or short-term kind of a stuff, sometimes, but then, all of these carry interest rates with them that are higher than SBA and micro loans. But if you have enough margins in your business, you can totally sustain that, and they are a nice way to manage and help your cash flow as you're growing. But you should play scenarios out to make sure you don't become like all of a sudden wake up 6 months later and you're never getting out of this process of factoring or purchase order finance because you can't seem to get ahead of it. So you're basically always taking 5% off the top of whatever your revenue stream is to pay these loans, right? So you need to have a strategy that might take you, as you have discipline in your growth, to start to accumulate money that you can become your own bank, to do your own purchase order financing and carry it. So you have to plan that out with your accountant, most likely, if you don't understand how to do those kind of modelings on your own thing. But that you have to plan that part out. Then unsecured loans are rare. I have seen them now pop back up as a result of when the recovering from the recession, they reduced some of the restrictions on lenders on how they can loan money. And I've been seeing some unsecured loans coming out based off of a pure credit score. Very high interest rates on them. So look at those, like 24%, 36%. Really high interest rates on them, okay? And it's just basically all about your credit score. There's some that don't even go on your personal because they just want to have a phone number, and they take like 4 different credit cards and give you a $25,000 line of credit on each one of those. So you get your $100,000. And, so they're okay, but you got to have a lot of confidence on what it is that you're going to be using that money for, and very specific intent. Do not use them for cash flow. Use these other things for cash flow. Because even though purchase order, people say, oh, purchase order accounts receivable, it's 36%. Well, no, it's only 2% on that invoice. So if you're just paying 2% now, and you can do that 15 times in a year, not just 2% a month at 20 to 24%. You can do it 100 times in a year. You know what I mean? So it's just 2% on each transaction. So it's really much more tactical on what is the profit on that particular transaction and what your margins are. Okay, equipment financing, you get leasing, lots of different options for those. And then community banks, just a quick, the community banks are ones that are most likely to provide some of these SBA, or if you're banking, because they want to help the local community, versus an investment bank is somebody that typically is going to manage when you're much, much bigger, and you're going to go out and get bigger money and then go public or sell your company. An investment bank, and those guys get involved. But there's all different kinds of banks along the way. There's a section in my book, Inside Secrets to Angel Investing, that explains all that. All right. You're going to make more. Private investors' motivation is to make more money. Their money, however much they have, whatever it is sitting there making money for them now. It may not be that much because it's just in regular savings, but even if it's in the stock market or wherever it is, it's making money from now. So they want to make more money than what they're doing right now because they know it's making money. So there's a risk associated with moving that money into what you are. So a lot of times entrepreneurs will say, because they are not understanding where they want to go. They are not a company that's trying to build something that's going to have some multiple on where they are, that they're going to sell it for 30, 50, $100 million down the road, or ultimately go public. That's rare, just on the record, that's rare to go public. But they go, you know what, because they don't want to try to work hard enough to get an exit in 5 to 10 years. They really are trying to build a business that they're just going to run and do their own thing. And they don't want anybody being a boss to them, and so they put these buyback provisions. They want to, well, you know what, in year 3, we're going to buy back the stock from the investor. Well, the investor's not really that interested because that's only where you are at year 3. You got enough money to buy them out at whatever, return that would be, or your current market valuation at that point in time, then you got enough to grow the business to what you need to grow it to, and they want to go along for the ride. So it's much better to figure out a different type of way to attract them that puts them in, like do a royalty revenue financing if you don't want to have equity shareholders. Then they can get 4x their money out of your revenue and go away when it's done, versus having to figure out a way to build it enough to sell it or something like that. I put this in here because I talk about not going public. I put that on the record. 70 to 80% of all the exits are through acquisitions. And so you need to understand that that's really the goal and the target of where you're going to go. And part of figuring out your plan is figuring out who would want to buy this and how big do you need to be, what place do you need to be, how many employees, how many eyeballs, how many whatever you need to be, how many customers, and whatever your different value propositions are for you to be acquired. Is it unique, a strategic acquisition from a company because it's a piece of software that fits into their niche of their type of customers or a type of business that they need to go to? I just heard last night from that same person that where this business is going, it's a gaming thing that's a team gaming environment. And their Dick's Sporting Goods owned the building that they're moving into, this subleasing, that was a software company for youth teams. And I thought, Dick's Sporting Goods bought that company? Well, that was because they wanted to inroad into high school and youth sporting needs to buy their uniforms and buy their equipment from Dick's Sporting Goods. But now who would have thought that they would have gone into a software team membership management software thing as an acquisition? Well, it totally makes sense when you look at it. So if you were doing that kind of software, you might, not think about a Dick's Sporting Goods wanting to buy you, but that would be a strategic acquisition for them. So then the other exits come from small cap IPOs. They used to be called direct public offering. Now Reg A Plus really offers that. There's another presentation on that if you want to learn about Reg A Plus. And then traditional IPOs, which we've already talked about, were fairly rare. All you really have to do is, if you want to learn who goes that, one nice thing about public companies is that the ones that are making the acquisitions, they have to do filings on their acquisitions. So you can go to a public company and find out the kind of companies that they're buying by going to their SEC registration and looking at that, because they have to file all that stuff for the SEC. So you can find who's going to acquire you with that. Investors also want to give back with their experience. So part of it, if they're at the very early stage, they want to help you navigate and be successful. So they'll participate in their knowledge and resources as well as their money. They also want to create jobs and contribute to the economy. And they really want to stay active. If they're an investor that's not currently running their own business, not one of those business owner investors or an employee someplace that's making $300,000, $400,000 a year and doing this, then they're retired or they've sold a company, and so they like to be active in helping companies succeed, and they might commit a day a week in different companies to be an interim CFO, to be somebody that helps on marketing strategy, that looks at a bigger picture to help the entrepreneur move along. So it's cash for shares. Understand that it's a whole new level of complexity when it comes to taking on people's money, because you have to report to them. There's a legal obligation to those investors. There's a lot of things that make it much more complex, rather than it's not just they're not just a sugar daddy that's just giving you money to go do with what you want to do. It's not a gift, it's an investment. So there's a difference between accredited and unaccredited. Accredited basically means, and this comes depending on how you're going to raise capital. Accredited are those with, on the financial side, it's individual income of $250,000 a year, or household income of $350,000 a year, and $1 million in net worth that doesn't include your primary residence. And it's a differentiator that the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, that regulates all of raising capital and public companies and all that stuff when it deals with any kind of stock. They've set it up that said the general assumption is that if they're accredited and they've got that much money, they're smart enough to know what works and doesn't work. That's kind of the general theory. So they get to invest in companies, and if the certain offerings means that entrepreneurs can only raise money from accredited investors. Okay, 506C is the 504 or 506B is supposed to be accredited, but they just sign a piece of paper. 506C says that they have to prove that they're an accredited investor. These are under Reg D offerings. 504 is what they use now for intrastate. So on intrastate, Reg CF, and Reg A+, it's a mix of accredited and unaccredited, and they do it based off of income. If they're under a certain amount of income, they're limited in how much they can invest, because the SEC says you don't know enough about how to invest, and so we're going to make it so that you can only lose so much money. And so they limit how much that they can put into any given company or in a total in a year. And so it's just important, depending on your offering, to understand the difference and who you have to talk to, because you might have to clarify if they're accredited or unaccredited, and you might be limited in how many unaccredited investors you can take into your offering. So within it, there's documents that become part of this. When you incorporate, or when you set up your LLC, you have an operating agreement, you have these basic things. Well, you have to create those so that somebody else can use them as well. So a stockholder agreement says this is kind of how all of our stock is going to have. If it's an LLC, you're going to be part of the operating agreement. You have term sheets. If you're negotiating the terms of the investment, then you're going to create a term sheet. VCs use term sheets, Angel Group use term sheets. If you're raising capital, you're going to have a lot of individual investors, then you typically have a private placement memorandum. That's a PPM. And it's a document that takes your business plan and takes out all the really beautiful, wonderful things you're going to do, and it's just the facts, Jack. And it puts it into the PPM, and then it puts pages of risks, so that investors will know all the ways that they can lose their money in that deal, so that when they sign on the dotted line and they give you their money, they don't have a recourse to come back, well, I didn't know, unless you left it out, and then it's fraud. But they will, I didn't know, if that contract didn't go through, they wouldn't have that $5 million in revenue. Okay? So you have to disclose all that stuff in your PPM, and it's a CYA for yourself, and really a protection on the investor side, because they have to cognitively know, they have to be very aware of what they're going to use, how they might lose their money on your deal. Then we get into subjective versus objective. And this kind of goes to this other one about first-in rules. So subjective investors, those people that are investing off of emotion. It's because they either have fallen in love with the project and what you're doing. They're like, I can't believe this item or this solution's never been in the market before. It totally makes sense. I want it, right? So then I'm going to invest because I know if I want it, other people want it. And then there are people that just know that entrepreneur, that founder, and they say, if that founder, if anybody can do it, that founder can do it. They know this industry so well, they're so hardworking, they have such integrity, they can do it. So that's your subjective money. It has an emotional attachment to it. And always the first money in is going to be the subjective money. But then you eventually have to move into the objective money, right? Where they have a business list, if you will. They've got a checklist of what they expect the business to have. They are in the business of investing. There's no emotional attachment. Ultimately, they make a decision between this company and that company on a gut feel, so there's an emotion aspect to it. But they're going to be investing based on the real metrics of what it is that you're trying to do. And so these oftentimes overlap, because sometimes you'll have an objective investor that you know, so they'll invest more readily. But objective investors usually come in after the first money is in. And so you need to sort of understand how you're going to work with that. So sometimes people will, in the very, very early seed stage, if they don't have this kind of stuff, and I've been interacting on social media with a couple of entrepreneurs that clearly don't understand this. And so, they get to a point where they just want some money. So they'll take some money from one guy and it'll be 25,000 and it'll be these terms. And then they'll take some money from somebody else and it'll be these terms. And then they think that they're selling it at $1 a share, let's say, but in order to get this next 50,000 they really need, they're going to sell it at 50 cents a share, right? You can't do that. Everybody within a certain round has to be treated equally in that round. That's one of the rules of the SEC, because otherwise you have to go back and do, if that person bought a dollar a share, then legally you're going to have to go back and give them a double his shares to make them equal to the one that you told them at 50. And so you'll see these cap tables that are all over the place, and you got to do major cleanup before you can get really serious objective money of it, like an angel group or VC. If you got a mess because you've been randomly taking money from all different kind of people in all different ways, then it all has to get cleaned up, and that can be very costly to do that. And it could be a reason why people won't invest. It'll limit or prohibit other future investors from investing in the deal because you did it sloppily to start with. And so there's lots of options, and more options when it comes to raising capital because of all the different types of all the different types of ways of raising capital that are out there. So in venture capital, people, they use that term VC a lot of times, really not understanding within the class of capital raises what that is. But you've got to do the math. Most VCs are going to invest in companies that either have $1 million in revenue or are on track to doing that, because it drives the valuation up to make them a 10, 20, $30 million company. So when they come in with their $1 million, $2 million in one fell swoop, then because they won't do less than a certain amount, like an angel investor, that does 25K or 50K, or a group that might do $500,000 or $1 million altogether. They're going to be doing money because they have a big chunk of money that they have under management. They might have 100 million under management. So if they want to put 10 million into a company, because they're going to do 10 companies investment, they have to, that company has to warrant that valuation. So they have to be a bigger company in order to warrant that investment and not take over and buy the entire company. And so because they're not going to manage 100 companies in a $100 million fund, they're going to manage a few companies within that fund, just because of the nature of them having on boards and being involved in it, and if they want that kind of stuff. So you have to do the math when it comes to attracting them in their later stage, just simply by necessity. So corporate venture funds are usually investing in companies in order to get a strategic look at what's happening in the market. And if you can get a corporate venture fund, they come in after venture capital. They kind of finish out a round on a venture capital. If you're doing a $10 million and a $5 million venture capital, and you need 10 million, a corporate fund might come in with the other 5 million. But they're doing it to get a look-see into the industry that they can't see from their high level of being a big company. And so they want to, it's a way to get access to your IP, not to take it over or to do it because that would be prohibited, but they want to understand on this piece, and then it sets a stage for them to be an acquisition, for you to be acquired by them when they do that a lot of times. Private equity funds are those guys that typically a company has to be, on average, there are exceptions to the rule, but it's $10 million in revenue and $3 million in EBITDA on the low end of what they do. They typically will come in and they're either doing a full acquisition for a market roll-up, hedge funds sometimes are in the private equity stage to create a bigger company to be sold, or they're going to do something. In some cases, they'll come in and they might take a 40% equity, buy out some existing investors, buy out part of the founder's money, and have that founder in golden handcuffs for 5 years to get it to this next level where they infuse more money in, and then they buy the rest of it or they sell it. So it's kind of it works for you as an entrepreneur as a stair step to an exit strategy. So if you really want to get your company to be a $30 million company, and let's say they're a $10 million company now, before you sell it, you would sell off some now to a private equity fund, work with them to get it to a $30 million company, and then exit in its entirety at that point in time. PIPEs, or private investments into public entities. This existed when companies would do reverse mergers into pink sheets, and they would go get money with that. With the event of Reg A+, that doesn't happen near as much. The need for pink sheets and OTCB is not as much, although over-the-counter bulletin board stocks are where Reg A+ companies may fall when they become public that way. And so investment bankers are, a lot of times, there's a lot of Wall Street firms that will put $10-20 million into a Reg A+ company, raising that kind of money, the same way they might have done a pipe company in the past. All right, so this is sort of like a landscape of all the stages of the companies with the revenues that they would generate and the types of money that they would get along the way. So, you start, if the market participant is this lifestyle firm, and then might grow into a middle market to a market maker firm, and you go from very high risk with the investors to low risk. So this is just sort of a general landscape of the type of money that you go through when you go from bootstrapping to alternate lenders, to angel investors that lead to venture capital, to institutional lending that lends to equity markets. Just kind of give you a general broad scope of how that capital will change over time depending on your stage, and also thinking back to when we talked about the business plans and how they change along the way because of the different type of money and the different type of revenue that you're generating. So the validated business, this is the kind, if you're going to go raise any kind of outside capital from any kind of investors, particularly at the very early stage, if you don't have revenues to prove your business model already, you have to have this stuff to prove that you have a validated business so that you can attract the capital. So that's where knowing your competition becomes really, really, really critical. So you understand the niche of what you can wedge into an existing market if there's a lot of competition in there, and even really, if for startup, if you're just going to do a market participant and raise money from people within your community, something like that, they all want to know this as well. So how are you going to market against all the other dry cleaners in your area, right? And so how are you going to put the money in the register? Because without the money in the register, you can't sustain your business operations. You can only live so long on equity money that comes in. You have to get to a point that you're generating revenue that covers the cost of your operations, okay? The valid financial forecast, I mentioned not a percentage of or of a market or a multiple of X. Those are where the hockey sticks happen, where they do like this. And occasionally, because there's a compounding effect of revenue that might be because there's some kind of subscription business or there's other kind of things that could generate a hockey stick type of effect on revenue, but you've got to have really good explanation on the sales cycle and the conversion cycle and all that kind of stuff, how you're going to do it. The investor-ready documents are those things that I talked about. If you're not going to go through a full PPM route and you want to negotiate terms, then you at least have a document that describes your ideal terms. The ones that it's going to be this amount of money as a minimum investment for this amount of shares, and this is what we're going to do with it. This is how much we're going to do. If you're doing a convertible note into a PPM or a Series A, or you're using one of the safe notes into that, you might want to describe it before you want to go pay legal fees. Describe what you're looking at for this so that you can negotiate with your founder investors, your friends and family up front, and you pay the lawyer the money to put those terms into writing, and it becomes the baseline for the consistency of the rest of that round, okay? And a complete operating plan, right? So you got your business plan, but your operating plan becomes your due diligence document. When your investors want to see, because a business plan is going to be a summary, a pitch deck is going to be a summary. And they say, well, I really want to see your full, what do you mean by how you're going to generate revenue? I want to see your full plan or your white paper or your competitive analysis or your white paper on how you're going to go and generate this revenue and how you're going to use all these different, you want to be able to have that, and depending on their sweet spot of the things that they look at, that they use as their criteria of measure success, they may only look at one section of a 100-page document or all the other things that you have in your business plan. They're probably not going to look at it, but the fact that you have it and the thing that they care about is good, they're going to assume the rest of it's good, okay? And then a strategy to execute on funding once it's been received. This is really, really important. One of the things I talk about with companies when they're raising capital and when you're figuring out how much money you need, let's say you've got a basic plan, a basic WordPress website. But and when you're in business, you need a really good website that does all this stuff, and because right now it's sort of like an infomercial website. But you're going to have a commerce thing, and you're going to have all this stuff, and you're going to have people funneling in, and you're going to have ways that you're going to retain them with the pop-ups of these whatever, and you're going to have this whole kind of a program that's going to be integrated with and branding that's going to be consistent with all your online media. And you think it's going to be 20 grand to do that. And you haven't even budgeted for maintaining it. And you don't even know what the hosting is going to be, but you put 20 grand into your thing. So then when you get your money, you go out and you start taking bids and you start talking to people, and it turns out that when you need to be really launching your company, it takes you 90 days to figure out, and guess what? And then it takes them another month to get started with that, and you still don't even know exactly, and it turns out it's actually going to be 30 grand, and it's going to be 5 grand a month to maintain it and do your marketing campaign, and you might have had $1,000 in there, right? So now you already are over budget, and you didn't raise enough money to cover that expense, and it took you 4 to 5 months to get it done. Or you're taking shortcuts to try to get it to fit within your budget, and it's not going to produce the result that you really need. Or you end up having to spend a lot of your own time working on it instead of doing the things you need to do in your business. If you had gotten those bids ahead of time and knew exactly what it was going to take, and then you could include those people in your business plan that says, here's the proposal from this company to your due diligence, and this is their record, this is their testimonials, and so we have 100% confidence that they're going to be able to help us achieve our goals, and this is what it's going to cost, and this is what we're raising money for. Now that investor has just their level of confidence that you're going to be able to execute on what you say you're going to do has just gone up, because you took the necessary steps to figure out exactly what you're going to do in the first 90 days. So instead of taking 4 months, 5 months to get that up, you now are in 30 days, because now as soon as you get your money, you can sign on the dotted line and they can get started, and 30 days later, you're up and running, okay? That's part of a strategy to execute once you've received your funds. Okay, crowdfunding, right? This is a big term. It all got started with rewards-based. We're going to run through this real quick. The validated business is still critical, because as investors become more and more sophisticated about that, and there's more and more competition, because there's very low barriers to raising capital from a crowd. They want to be able to look into past your video and see that you have the things that we've talked about for a validated business plan. And then under due diligence, you've got this stuff and you know what you're going to do. So they have a comfort level, because guess what? Odds of them eyeball to eyeball to you, it's not going to happen. They have to believe based on your documents and what they can find out about you that you're trustworthy. They may be on a conference call and a Skype call, but not the same thing as sitting down across the table. So there's 5 ways to raise money from a crowd. You can do non-equity reward-based, right? That's the traditional type of Kickstarter kind of stuff, right? Where you're just trading product for money. There's interstate, that you are basically companies in a state that are domiciled there can raise money from investors within the state. Most states now, every state has some kind of provision on it. Most states can do up to 5 million now. Georgia, for example, can do up to 5 million. And you can have accredited and unaccredited in that. And so it's interstate crowdfunding. And then you got Reg CF. That's part of the Jobs Act. That's the one that allows you to raise up to $1 million from anywhere in the country. It has to go through a portal that's licensed by FINRA. So Indiegogo now has a Reg CF thing. You're selling equity for it. It can be accredited investors as low as, can do 25,000, 50,000, 100,000, whatever. Unaccredited can be as low as $100 as an investor for one share, let's say, up to $2,000 in a given company. And so Reg D 506C is for only just accredited, and they have to prove it, but you can raise unlimited amounts of money on that in a year on a Reg D 506C. It can be, you don't have to go through a broker-dealer to do that. You just have to have a transfer agent. Same thing with a Reg A+. Reg A+ can raise up to $50 million from anybody, accredited or unaccredited. You do a massive marketing, branding, outreach to people all over the country. It works best if you already have some kind of customer base or fan base. But we partner up with companies to do that and provide the investor relations on that. And we marry them up with an advertising strategy that establishes them as a trusted expert in their field as the CEO. It puts their product out there in front of the potential customers that would be buying it. And then from those customers, we call out the investors plus syndicate it with other angel groups and other types of investors and family offices under a Reg A plus, because you can do that and you just have to have a transfer agent. So you create a due diligence site, secure password on your own website. And so those are the ways you can raise money from the crowd, where you don't have to go to a traditional angel group to raise capital. But it's really important to understand the process of raising capital when you're raising capital and how many investors you need to have in order to do this. And this is based off of, I call it the Cougar theory of private equity investing. And it's based off of years, the 15 years, the 10 years that I ran angel investor events and ran an angel investor group, and what these investors looked at when I talked to entrepreneurs that had raised capital successfully and those that hadn't. And I would say, well, how many investors did you talk to? What was your funnel? And they would explain it. So this is based off of entrepreneurs as well as investors. And so it's just like a sales funnel. So when you're raising money, when you're doing sales for your company, everybody understands a sales funnel. You know, the 80-20 rule, you get them in your funnel, you convert them, and eventually they get down to a buyer. Well, it's the same thing. There's a numbers associated with how many people do you have to have look at your business plan to be the ones that will actually spend time understanding it and figuring out in order to make a buying decision. So the formula is 1 times 3 times 15, and this is how it works. So if you were raising $1 million in $25,000 increments, that's the typical investment amount for an accredited investor to put into a company, and then what a lot of times within angel groups, what they'll put in as an individual within that. So that means you have 40 check writers, okay? To get to 40 people that are going to write $25,000 checks, it's times 3, 120 sweethearts. And I call them sweethearts because those are people you're going to spend time with. You're going to answer their questions. You know, after a pitch event, you might have 5 out of a pitch event that are interested. They're going to do a follow-up with, or you do webinars, or you do whatever to talk to them. So you think about the time you got to spend with 120 sweethearts. But to get to 120 sweethearts, it's 5x. So I say by 15, but it was 3 times 5. I need to change that number. Anyway, it's 5x. So 5 times 120 is 600. So 600 have to have seen it or thought about it. And so when you're in an angel, if you're pitching at a venture capital event or an angel investor group, there's 40 people in the room, 25 people in the room, 100 people in the room. So they've all seen it and thought about it on whether they're going to come up and spend time with you or follow up with you like that. So you can get to your numbers quicker that way. That's one of the reasons why you do it. But you have to understand that out of that, you're only going to get a handful that are going to be sweethearts, and that's where you spend the real amount of time. But the reason why you do pitch events is just so that you can, the reason why you do pitch events is so that you can get to a numbers thing. What we don't know is on those crowdfunding is where's the multiple on the 600 on this. So it's like, we know that when you're selling, getting people to come into your store, and you're selling face-to-face, there's a certain formula on that. And we figured out over time, when it went to online marketing, how many landings do you need to have to get them converted into the funnel? How many touches of emails or outreaches do you have to get them to move down your funnel and get to be in, what is that funnel, right? And it was always a much bigger number on eyeballs. There's not enough data out there to really figure out yet what you have to do on your volume when it comes to an online environment or a Reg CF or a 506C or a Reg A+. But we do know that it's probably some multiple beyond 600. Is it 6,000? Well, you've got to have 6,000 people come to your website to look at it. Is it an order of magnitude of 10x on that? What is that number? Whatever it is, the whole point of a funnel is that you have got to understand that you are on a journey when it comes to raising capital. And it gets easier as you go, and you get better at talking about your business, and you get better and you learn more as you go so that you can have a more validated business and more confidence in your ability to achieve it. So part of what you go through is you start with your friends and family, even if you're doing a Reg CF or something like that, because you need money. There's always money. It costs money to do everything. So you want to do your money so part of your friends and family round is also budgeting for the next round. So if you're using friends and family because you're going to go do a interstate finance, well, what's your strategy for do that? Are you going to do direct mail? Are you going to run seminars? How are you going to do something, raise $5 million in your state? How are you going to do that? So, you have to have that plan, and it costs money to do that. So sometimes you have a plan, and part of what the friends and family are investing in is knowing that you have this ability to execute on your business that's this. But part of getting there is getting the money to get it, and you have a plan to get the money. So you have a plan for your business and a plan to get the money. Okay, I'll give you the 50 grand, the 100 grand, the 5 of us will come together with 10 grand a piece and put that money in so that you can have your plan to get to the next level. All right. So typically it's going to cost you $40,000 to $80,000 to raise $1 million. When that comes legal fees, event fees, travel fees, commissions, if you're having to pay commissions on stuff, consultants, whatever. If you're doing something on an outreach, it's the marketing people, it might be the advertising you have to do. There might even be more, okay? So raising money becomes a lot like selling a product. You've got to increase your exposure of your company, right? If you don't have a strategy to get to all those eyeballs, then you don't have a strategy to actually get to the finish line. And it takes repetition, just like with customers. Used to be the model was it took like 5 soft touches, 6 soft touches, 8 touches of emails or this kind of thing for people to have a comfort level that you can convert them. Now it's like who knows, because they may come in through Twitter and you don't have their email, or they may come in on LinkedIn and they only see 1 out of 5 posts that you do, or you know what I mean? There's so much noise and way that people are touched these days electronically that it's hard to really understand that you just kind of have to do it all, right? But you've got to have repetition and communication. So when it comes to investors, that means that if you've got a new piece of information, you're communicating it out there, you're sending it out there to them. So that you keep them engaged and they get closer, because when they become a no, they'll let you know. And until they're a no, they're a potential yes. And so sometimes it's whether they have the money right now. Sometimes it's just, wait to see you get to a certain milestone. So never close the door on an investor until they become a no. So it's repetition and communication. And you never know when they're going to bring other people in. They finally get to that point and they bring 3 friends in and they finish out your round, right? Okay, and all of the hidden gotchas are gone. Those hidden gotchas are those things that you didn't anticipate, not really knowing your cost of goods or all these other kinds of things that might be a part of whatever it is in your business plan that you're gonna, that be the gotchas of the things that they think are missing in your plan, okay? The principle of entrepreneurship, I think we're wrapping up here. Begin with the end in mind. Where are you going? You want to be a rich CEO and not a poor founder. So don't be so like, I don't want to give up this much equity. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, because you've got a sense of scarcity. You're operating from a sense of scarcity versus a sense of abundance. It's better to bring an investor in that can be an influencer in your business, to take over a piece of your business or a group of people or VCs, and they bring in people to run the company. You're a rich founder at that point, right? You're a rich CEO versus a poor founder that never got any money, never got a team, and just struggled and had all that stuff of that pain and suffering that I talked about before. Know what you need on your money as you go. The fundamentals are the same. Whether you're a participant or a market maker, satisfy a need in the market, figuring out your cash flow, how you're going to get there. Some people call it growth hacking, right? Or the lean startup model. That's where you're validating your business along the way and making money as you do it. And A+ management will outperform with a B+ product versus a B management with an A product. And investors know that, because the reason why that is that there's always going to be obstacles and bumps in the road along your way. Management that's got experience in dealing with that stuff knows how to overcome those things and not flail around or anticipate that they're coming, and see the future and make a shift when they need to, when it's trends or competition or things like that. So that concludes my time. Here's my websites, KarenRands.co. You can follow me on Twitter at Karen Rands. I got a couple of Facebook places. If you want to get the free investor tips, these little videos that I do, sign up at bit.ly/CCCB for Compassionate Capitalist Coffee Break. Sign up. And I'll say, anybody got any questions right now as we wrap up? You want to get to that? Thank you very much for tuning in. I didn't run out of battery.